And then when that thing is mastered or it becomes a habit, then what do we work on next? Because it is a lifelong process. Whatever you're doing for fertility is going to help your overall health for years to come. So anything that you're doing foundationally, building that house is just going to make you a stronger parent, a stronger grandparent, and so on.
Longing for a birth free from unnecessary interventions? One where you feel confident, empowered, and at peace, trusting your body to work as God designed? If so, you're in the right place. I'm Audrey, a Bible believing Christian, childbirth educator, wife, and mama of four, two born via C section and two born at home. I know what it's like to feel overwhelmed by birth decisions, to wonder if you're crunchy enough for an unmedicated labor, or to fear another intervention heavy birth. But with education, practical tools, biblical encouragement, and most importantly, by trusting the Lord, you can prepare for a natural birth with clarity, confidence, and even joy, and I'm here to help you do just that. So grab your water bottle, settle in, and let's prepare you to trust God's design for your body, your baby, and your faithful labor. Well, hey, everybody. So glad, as usual, that you are tuning in to today's episode. And I don't know if you can tell, like I can tell, that I have some head congestion, but I'm not going to make you listen to this for too terribly long. I'm just going to get the intro, get her bio in your earbuds, and then we'll be done with this. Thankfully, during my interview, I did not have the sniffles, so you're not going to have to listen to this nasally goodness through the entirety of today's episode. But I did want to quickly say that the community group that I have been working on will be available next week. So, if you are hankering for some support, for resources, for encouragement, to link arms with other moms in a similar season as you are, whether that's newly pregnant, preparing for labor, fresh postpartum, or just looking ahead to maybe having future babies, this Facebook group is what you want to be a part of. I will be in there weekly, checking in, answering questions, finding things, sharing things, and hopefully it can be a place where you can foster some relationships with other women that are going through what you're going through as you seek a more natural approach to labor, and above all, to bring glory to the Lord in all your labors, whether that's preparing for birth, postpartum, and all the work that that is on your body and mentally and hormonally, or if you're just in the throes of motherhood. It is going to be more directed toward birth prep. However, I don't want that to deter you from joining if that's not the season you're currently in. I want this group to also really just be a place of community and connection with like-minded mamas. So, if you want the deets on when that launches or when that opens, you can join my newsletter. The link will be in the bio. Or you can tune in next week and I will remind you then to go to the show notes and submit a request to join that group. Very, very much so looking forward to being active in there with you guys, giving resources to you guys, and just getting to know you guys in general. I'm very excited about having the opportunity to do that. It's not just going to be me talking to a mic, it's going to actually be me talking to real people. So join that. I think it'll be a really special resource and opportunity for community and connection for you guys. Now, I'm going to finish up with this intro so you can stop having to listen to my nasally voice. So, in today's episode, you will hear me interviewing Susan Gladstein. She is a holistic fertility practitioner, health coach, and mom to seven. After navigating the challenges of conceiving following a vasectomy reversal, she became passionate about helping other couples find hope and guidance on their fertility journeys. A firm believer in the power of faith, Susan has experienced deep connection to the Lord throughout her fertility journey, welcoming a miracle baby at 40, leaning on God through the heartbreak of a miscarriage, and now joyfully expecting again at 44. I pray this episode blesses you, and here is my conversation with Susan. Well, hey, Susan, thank you for joining me today. I'm so happy to have you on the podcast. Before we get into our conversation, could you just let us know who you are and a little bit about what you do?
Thank you. I'm super pumped to be here. And I felt like whenever I found your podcast, it was kind of like, oh, like this is amazing. We're on the same level. So
Yes.
I am a retired Air Force veteran, married to a first responder, and we've got now, well, our seventh child together on the way. So I have been in the health and fitness world for about 10 years and switched over to really helping couples after a vasectomy reversal to conceive because that was such an amazing and impactful thing for us. So it's been a wild ride, and that's my whole jam is bringing more babies into the world.
That is such a beautiful mission to have. I think, I as a Christian, like I want as many people to have a positive, uplifting view of children as I can have conversations with. I want to impart that upon them, but to have that be such a clear part of God's story that He's led you down, where it's not just in conversation of like, oh yeah, kids are great, have babies, but no, like the calling He's put on your life for this specific mission that you're going down is so intentional about saying, no, I really, really, really want to actually help that happen. I don't want to just encourage you to do it because children are a blessing from the Lord, but I want to help make that possible for you. And I absolutely love that. And that you're stepping into it. You're being obedient to that call that God's placed on your life. So cool. So I am curious when I was reading your bio that you have a really big interest in holistic health. That seems to be a very big part of your journey in fertility, and it seems to be a big part of what you guide couples in. So I'm curious, I know that's helpful in pregnancy, but even outside of pregnancy, are there areas of your life that have been impacted through you prioritizing taking a more holistic approach to your health? And then of course, we'll get to the pregnancy part too.
Yes, thank you. So my sort of deep dive into holistic health started because I had an adverse reaction to the anthrax vaccine before I deployed in 2019, and I didn't think I was ever going to feel healthy again. And so I was like scrubbing the internet on all things just to try to make sense of why I felt like a 90-year-old woman running a marathon with obstacles, like suddenly. And
Yeah.
if I would ever get it back, because I was like pretty health conscious. Like I had been on this 8-year journey of working out and cleaning up my nutrition, getting rid of my emotional ties to food and all of these things. And I just discovered like this whole thing about detoxing. And I really came to the conclusion that I don't think that God made a mistake when He created our bodies. And everything that we need, He's provided for us.
Yeah.
And so it really just shifted my mindset into looking more natural ways, like eliminating chemicals and processed foods. And I mean, even just the realization that our skin is our largest organ. So, like, what am I putting on it was like this epiphany that I hadn't really had before. And so, obviously, it made a huge difference in my own personal health because I was able to heal completely. I did a metals detox, which I recommend everybody do at some point, just because the way our food supply is. But
Right.
um, I was able to be fully healed and thankfully for that. But it just led me on this whole path of like, well, what else can I do? What else can I do? And it can be overwhelming because everything is so crazy. Like the food dyes. And I'd kind of dabbled in even just like preservatives, and I had issues with migraines and digestive problems for years, not realizing that the quote unquote health shake that I was taking that was supposed to be making me healthy had artificial sweeteners, which were causing my issues. So as soon as I eliminated that, the migraines that doctors just said, here's a pill, and the digestive problems that I thought was just my cross to bear went away.
Wow.
Skin cleared up, like so many things that I had spent tons of money on fixing
Yeah.
were all like just healed naturally. And so that's really been an important part for our whole family is just like, how can we be healthy? Like, I don't know, part of my, I don't know, midlife crisis and having a baby at 40 was um, realizing when my grandkids come over, I want them to be like, oh, I need a break because grandma wore me out today. That's
Yeah.
why. So when I started vision casting what I wanted to look at or how I wanted my life to be at 70, 80, 90, like the stuff of the day that I was wrapped around, the way the scale looked or how my pants fit, like none of that really mattered because it was like focusing on longevity and health long term.
Yes. So this legacy of health is something that you're wanting to impart upon your children as well. And of course, it will benefit you as you go on to continue parenting your littles that are still under your roof. And ideally, when you become a grandma and you start loving on those babies, and you're going to be passing down this legacy to them. I know that that seems to be pretty important to you in your story that you do that. Yeah.
For sure. I have two kids. They're 22 and 18. And then my husband and I, after 9 years, decided to start all over in our 40s and
I love
have
it.
a baby. So now we're expecting number two of our reversal babies. And the beauty of having kids who are adults and then starting all over is like, it goes by really, really fast.
Yeah.
And all of the things that when I was in my 20s with my other kids that I would get wrapped around the axle about or frustrated with. Now I just sort of cherish those things,
Yes.
the late night, like cuddle sessions and
Mm.
even temper tantrums. I try to embrace those because I know that when they become teenagers, it's a whole other set of problems. So,
Yes. You have the benefit of perspective now, which
for
is,
sure.
yeah, which is something when you're just in the trenches of being a young mom with young children, you don't yet have. And so you have people saying, it gets better or it gets harder about like, a variety of different things, but you don't have that tangibility to wrap your mind around yet. But you do. You have the benefit of, okay, no, it's not just in the abstract of people telling me that. I have lived it and experienced it, and it is true. And I can now apply that to a parenting these little children because I now have lived it and I understand it. I think that's honestly, I think that's really sweet. And so you mentioned you're starting over. I'm putting air quotes for people who can't see us. You're starting over, which is true in a sense, but it really is just a continuation. And something I have talked about with friends is this idea that God made our bodies with a purpose, with the right design. It wasn't by accident that menopause doesn't happen until, late 40s, 50s. And there was a time where women were just having babies until they weren't able to have babies anymore. Is that something that, I mean, not to get I know you're pregnant right now with the baby, so we don't get too far ahead. But is that kind of where you and your husband are leaning now in this idea of fertility and being more open to the children that God wants to give you, or is it a little bit different?
No, for sure. It's funny because when I got pregnant earlier this year, I actually thought I was going into menopause. So I'm 44 and my hormones were all out of whack. So I was doing all these different things and gut health testing and trying to self-diagnose and regulate what I was feeling. And I was like, oh, maybe I should take a test. And then when it was positive, like I literally was shocked because I just was like, this is it. I'm going into menopause. Everybody's fertility falls off a cliff. Even though I had a baby at 40 and got lots of geriatric pregnancy, I don't know, it was kind of just a negative connotation by other people. And now, especially now being on this fertility journey and seeing, first of all, looking at my toddler, who was an absolute miracle in the way that she came to be like totally, totally, totally a God thing in every sense of the word. It took us 2 years to have her join our family. And in the wait, I spent all of my time like really focusing and prioritizing my own health so that when she came, I was the best version of me. So she got a very different version of me than my kids did when they were small, like very healthy. So she's an avid traveler and very into her gymnastics and always lecturing about prioritizing protein at meals and things. And so now that I'm pregnant at 44, like I asked my husband the other day, like, hey, how do you feel about being on like People magazine for being like the oldest couple to be naturally having babies without interventions? And
Yeah.
he smiles really big and he's like, well, I'm willing to try. Like,
Okay.
whatever. So,
I love that.
um,
That's sweet.
so I kind of have just felt like, God has woven this incredible path for us and led me into fertility coaching. And every time I look at our miracle baby. I just think there's so many couples out there that want that. I can't not help that because this is a very generalized statement of the medical community, but it's like if you go in for a fertility treatment, that's what they quote unquote sell. So that's what they're going to guide you towards. They're not going to talk to you about the importance of sleep and regulating your blood sugar and all of these other things. They're just going to say, oh, your labs look normal. Don't know why you're not pregnant.
Yeah.
Here, do this treatment.
Mm.
And I just, and I felt that like the rush of needing to move to something quickly because I was approaching 40 and it wasn't happening. And I just need to move towards that. But I honestly think that there was something beautiful in the time that it took to really like have me, our relationship, my spiritual foundation, all of these things in the wait were so important that even though it was really tough, part of the toughest times of my entire life in the wait, I wouldn't have traded it for anything because it made me a better wife, a better mom, a better human. And so I think that we have a body God has given us, and again, did not make a mistake. So we need to
Right.
really cherish that and do our part, I think. And but that's not the message of the world. It's like, oh, take this supplement, take that. But it's like if you're not building the foundation of your house
Yeah.
solidly, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, like you're missing the foundation.
Yes, absolutely. And in line with that, I know that you have faced a miscarriage, and like you just already said, you have been labeled geriatric in your pregnancy journey past 40. And so, how did you handle those labels, and how did that help your faith grow through those challenges?
So I again, when I found out I was pregnant earlier this year, I was completely shocked because again, I was going through menopause or so I thought. And honestly, I was like not real happy about it because it was messing with I was retiring from the military. I host retreats in Costa Rica. So it was like, I have a retreat coming up. I don't want to be in my first trimester. And it wasn't what I had planned. And when I finally came around to the embracing it as part of the plan, I miscarried.
Mm.
And I was angry. Like, why would you bring this
Yeah.
to me only to take it away? And I heard the Lord speak to me audibly in my car in a stream of tears and
Mm.
anger. And he said, I know, I
Mm.
lost my son too.
Wow.
And in that moment, I felt loved, I felt heard, and that I wasn't forgotten, and that there was purpose in the pain. Because in my experience, I'm here most clearly from the Lord in pain. But it really caused me to sort of step back and say, okay, whatever your plans are, Lord, I will do them. So I got pregnant again, like 3 months later. And this time it was kind of a lot of mixed feelings with it because it was lots of, I'm scared because I didn't know I was having a miscarriage until I went into the doctor and there was no heartbeat and the baby hadn't progressed. And I was 9 weeks at the time and completely blindsided by it. But I was like, okay, whatever you have planned, I will I will do. So then I got pregnant again. And of course it met with a lot of emotions and just like fear. And in my shower, I was just like, huh, I wonder what was the date that I miscarried? And I realized that my due date with this baby is the same day that I miscarried. And
Mm.
I felt like it was God telling me, I've got this.
Mm.
Do not worry. Do not fear. So then I'm like, okay, if that's the message. Do not fear. Do not fear. Do not fear. Okay, I promise I won't fear,
Yeah.
which is like easier said than done. But I took it as I call him God winks, just reminding me that he's in the story. He's got this. And whatever emotions that I feel like I need to like exhaust myself with is probably just not really necessary because he already knows the story and it's always better than I could ever ask or imagine. So
Yes.
I'm just gonna let it ride,
Yeah.
whatever your plans are, which is again way easier said than done.
Way easier said than done, but also so much more peace filled as well than the
For sure.
alternative of even just thinking we have this pseudo sense of control, or if if I had done this, this wouldn't have happened, or whatever the what ifs in our brain that circulate that still bring it back to us and us being in charge and us being in control, rather than saying, God, I don't know why. I don't know why, but I do know your character doesn't change and I can trust you. So, mm,
Amen to that. Yeah.
yeah,
And I think, especially in the fertility world, because so much of the world is trying to tell you otherwise. I mean, most of my clients are, you know, usually late 30s, and they think like, well, my fertility has fallen off a cliff and it's not happening. And there's all this negativity. And I get with a client and I just breathe life. Like if God's placed it on your heart to be a parent, like it's going to happen. It may not look the way
yeah,
you want it to. It may not be in the time frame that you think it should, but it will happen. And my goodness, if I haven't had two people like within a month of working to each other, the very next month they've gotten pregnant. And I think there's so much power in what we tell ourselves and what we believe. What are we speaking out? What are we believing? What are we allowing into our lives? Are we allowing that negativity? Are we allowing that to just sort of fester? And because whatever you believe, you achieve. So if it's filled with negativity, then our mind subconsciously will do things to self-sabotage. That's just how it works. So my main thing is just like, I believe you're going to get pregnant.
yeah. There's two things I have thought on that whenever that's come to mind. There's a quote, and I always butcher it, and I always misquote like who was the original sayer of this thing, but I think it was maybe one of the presidents. But it was whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. And that's something that lives rent free in my brain a lot of times because whenever I'm facing a challenge, or most of the time, honestly, it comes up when I'm doing homeschool with my kids and they're telling me, like, Mom, I can't, it's too hard, or whatever it is, or, they're being told that they can't have something and then the world is falling apart, of course, and there's nothing they can do. There's nothing fun. They're just so bored. And I tell them, if that's what you've decided in the moment that that's going to be how it is, then you're right. It's going to be that way. But if you choose to think a different way, if you choose to behave and in a Christian sense, if you choose to be content in all circumstances, well, it doesn't have to be this way. But then alongside that too, in this belief of that the Lord will do this thing through holistic healing, through having somebody who can coach them through the ins and outs of their fertility that they maybe didn't have an education on before they started seeing you. And ultimately, through all those things, holding their hands open to what God really wills for their lives and for their family structure. I like to think about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the Bible when they were faced with the choice of either bowing down before a pagan god or a pagan king who said they can't worship anyone but him, or being thrown into the fiery furnace. And of course, they said no. They said, "Hey, no, we're not going to do that because we believe that our God will save us from your hand, O king. We believe that he can. We believe that he's going to. But even if he doesn't, and we're still not going to, and we're still going to trust God, and we're still going to worship him." And that has always also been something in my mind when I've thought about, going from having C-sections to home birth. I wanted that home birth so bad. And it was something that I had idolized. It was something that I wanted so, so bad that it scared me. The idea that maybe God wasn't going to give that to me. Maybe that wasn't going to be part of my story. And I had to come to this place of truly believing that God was going to be good, that he had good plans for my life. He had good plans for my baby's life. And his character wasn't going to change. His love for me wasn't going to change, even if I had a repeat C-section, even if my plans didn't go as I hoped they would. He wasn't going to change. My faith in him wasn't going to change. And that really brought me into this place of this tension, like in this Bible story with these three men. I believed that he would bring me to have a home birth, and I believed that he could. But even if he didn't, I wanted to be in a place spiritually that I could still trust him. And so, yeah, I love that. I love that you recognize, though, the importance of our thoughts and the things that we're allowing ourselves to believe, withholding that tension, that it is still ultimately in God's hands and we can trust that. So that's a beautiful thing.
I kind of went through the same things similarly with my baby. Because so as I'm I had two C-sections with my younger two. The first, an emergency because they lost his heart rate for 4 minutes. And I woke up and thought I had to be at work. And as it turns out, I was there to have a baby. Um, but as I was going through this whole process of discovering holistic and alternative ways, I felt like I was too far into the process of changing my mind from a repeat C-section with my now 4-year-old. And granted, this is in 2020. She was born in December, so there was a whole lot of other things at play that whole year of my pregnancy. But
Yes.
um, it was kind of one of those things where I think I might have been like 32 weeks or something. And, it was really gnawing on me. Am I going to go just have a repeat C-section, or am I going to, try a more holistic thing? And it was a hard thing. And I finally just came to the conclusion that I was going to keep with the care that I had been on. I was going to do a C-section, that God was going to make it and see it through. And there were things that I did differently, just be more holistic minded. But we always have all this expectations and plans for how our birth is going to go, and then it never goes that way. So it's kind of like I had to let go of whatever expectations or concerns or worries that I had, and just trust that the Lord was going to lead me on the right path. And so it was really just me having confidence and just going the direction that I had been going. And if I would have known with my other two what I know now, things would have been a lot different. But I didn't, and I couldn't like dwell in that at all.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if anybody has listened to any of the other episodes in my podcast, I talk pretty often about how I didn't know hardly anything with my first two labors, and which is shocking to some, and it's shocking to me considering I'm a nurse. But I still, when I did my rotation in nursing school, I didn't see a single vaginal delivery. I only saw C-sections for the like 3 days, I think, that we were on that unit. And that that blew my mind that I never saw that. And even then though, even going in and seeing the C-sections, I still didn't really internalize it from the standpoint of me being the patient. And somehow I thought that taking a semester in nursing school and knowing the book smart stuff somehow would prepare me for labor itself. And it absolutely did not. 100% not. But we don't know what we don't know until we don't realize we don't know it. And so, yeah, like there's just this level of grace that we have to hold for ourselves. And we can because we have the grace of God. And because the birth choices we make are not salvific issues, and because of even all that on top of it, we know that the Lord has a story to write for us. And the things that we've experienced, the births that we've already had, those are part of his story that he wants us to walk out. And they help prep us for the good works that he has in store for us today. And in your case, I'm sure that what you went through with your earlier births and the different choices that you made and you didn't know yet now empowers you and invigorates you to help your clients in ways that they don't even know they need help right now. But because of what you've experienced, you're able to guide them and support them in things to get them a different outcome that you would have wanted, that you would have hoped for. You didn't even know to pray for. But now you get to do that for them because of what you went through.
For sure. And I will say that in the 2-year wait that it took to get pregnant, and when I really focused on my own, like prioritizing my own health, I had spent years pouring into everybody but myself. But I will say that all of that time that I spent doing that paid off immensely when it came time for our C-section. So even though it wasn't maybe what I had in mind, I will say that advocating for my baby and some things that I had held to be what I wanted that was outside of what the doctor's protocols were was an empowering experience. So when the nurse came in and she said to me, "This is like 30 hours after I've had my C-section. Do you guys want to go home?" Again, it's COVID. They were trying to clear people out, but I wasn't sleeping. Everybody was coming in and bothering, like, "Do you want a bath? Does your baby want a bath?" I don't
Yeah.
care. Just let me sleep. And I could not get good rest. But the fact that she advocated for us to go home so quickly, and the fact that I was in good enough shape to do so, I mean, I was walking laps right away and
Mhm.
things were healing. And by my 6 week checkup, I was back to walking 5 miles a day. But all of that was because I had all of these other foundations health wise that made that possible to really recover and recover well.
Yeah.
Where I feel like, I mean, I was in the best shape of my life when I got pregnant, but postpartum, that's a whole other story. But like to just be physically, mentally, spiritually, and emotionally strong when postpartum came, because there was a lot of things that really tested my ego about that whole thing being 40 and recovering from a C-section and
Mhm.
family in town and all of those things. But like to just be healthy from a holistic perspective, even though it may not have been my ideal situation, I don't think it could have been better, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it absolutely does. And going alongside with what you've been talking about in how this approach to holistic health, holistic wellness can really reshape future pregnancies, your whole life. And it's not too late, I think is a big thing that you can take away also from hearing your story. Because I know several women in my life right now that have confess to me that they want to have more babies or they have that desire, but they kind of squelch it. They're kind of like, oh, yeah, but we're done. We're done having babies. And when I ask them why, one of the first things that pop up is this geriatric pregnancy label that just flies around everywhere. It's like the boogeyman, and they don't want to touch it. They don't want to go near that. It's a mixture of they truly for like health purposes, they worry about, okay, well, I don't want to, cause something genetic with my child if I have keep having babies. But then I think on the other side of it, they've really just internalized that they can't be healthy enough to have a good pregnancy or a healthy pregnancy, a healthy experience for them, and then a healthy baby because there's just this massive weight of this label. So, how do you encourage your clients or just really anybody listening right now to push back against that geriatric pregnancy label? Like, is that a true concern or is it this boogeyman that we have created?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of all of the above, right? So, my husband, like, so he's a firefighter, and all of the guys that he works with, so he's got kids. His sons are all in their late 20s, so he's pushing 50 this year, and they're all like, why would you do this? You were almost free. Why would you start over? This is terrible. Like, now you're going to have to work forever. And there's just so much pressure on being free of kids. And he's like, no, having kids is the best legacy, like way more important than work or anything else we could possibly do. And I kind of feel the same way. Like, there's no job that you will ever have that you can't be replaced in. But like as a parent, you're irreplaceable to your child. And God knew exactly what he was doing when he created you to be your child's parent. So when I went into the doctor at this pregnancy at 44, I wholeheartedly expected to get the lectures and the like under the breath mumblings about my age because I had gotten it at 40. And when I said, like, I know I'm old. And he was like, you're actually healthier than most of my 20-year-olds. So he wasn't even worried about it. And now, even when I go in and I had to have additional ultrasounds because of my age, because I am geriatric, he very cutely just says, like, well, because of your age, you have to do this. We don't do them in office. We have to refer you out. But like, I get the sense that he is cheering for me. And I don't know if he had kids later in life, but like,
Yeah.
he's been so just very cool about the whole thing. So I kind of just am like, yes, yes, I want to defeat this whole myth that you're too old or your fertility falls off the cliff because, gosh, look at women in the Bible who had babies like super old. So it's like, well, if Sarah can do it like at whatever age, like I can do it at 44. And I
Yeah.
will tell you, I'm way healthier now than I was in my 20s. Even looking at my blood work from 4 years ago when I was pregnant, this has been a lifelong quest now for me. If you don't get to Thursday and decide, oh, I think I'm done being healthy, I think that's what's so wrong with our society that's focused on a number on a scale or a pant size instead of just thinking about health and longevity. I mean, fertility is honestly anti-aging. The more fertile you are, the more you're fighting against the aging clock and the things that shut down in our lives. And there's a lot that we can do to sort of slow that down. Certainly, our food sources don't help that. So we have to combat that with maybe supplements or whatever. But just getting outside. Like that was a thing for me during COVID that I hadn't spent so much time outside since I was a kid. And then in COVID, I found out that I really like riding my bike around the neighborhood and being out in the sunshine. And then I was so euphoric. I was like, man, I have really missed out on just being out in nature the way God has intended. That really propelled me into this whole different lifestyle with my kids where we are outside almost every day.
Yeah, I love that. So what I'm hearing from you is more than just a number, more than just the age that you are. It matters the health that you are because you can be 44 and be in terrific shape and maybe have the possibility of even having a healthier pregnancy, a healthier baby than you would say if you were in the prime of your fertility in the 20s and you're not taking care of yourself and you're not being mindful of movement and holistic things that take care of your whole body system, not just like one little shoot your shot kind of things. So yeah, so more than just the number, it's the whole approach to health is what I'm hearing from you, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I would be almost embarrassed as a health coach to say how my diet, my exercise, like what even is that back in my 20s, like sleep hygiene, terrible. I was a Dr. Pepper addict, chicken nuggets and mac and cheese was my daily go-to, which side note, my toddler now doesn't eat those. We go somewhere and she wants, grilled chicken with broccoli. People will comment about her all the time, either her eating habits or her behavior, or like, oh, how do you get your child to eat like that? And it's because that's how we eat. And to me, she shouldn't be the exception. She should be the norm. It's kind of like when you're eating healthy and everybody wants to know why you're on a diet. Like, shouldn't that just be the way that you eat, you know?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I agree. And that is something that I wish that I had understood earlier in my parenting and even now, and not just parenting, but my life. And even now, as I've gone through this journey, it's funny because it's probably been around since 2020, a little bit before 2020, when I really started trying to be more intentional about the way that we live, about what we fuel our body with. It's a lot of undoing now. I wish I had done what you're doing now with your 4-year-old with my oldest, so that now we wouldn't be doing this little undoing of what we've made habits, what we've just kind of typically put on the plates for the kids. Because I'm driven. I'm going to do it. I'm going to continue this path. I'm going to continue omitting and less process and all the different things that I know are best for a flourishing, healthy body. But there is now the added difficulty that I self-inflicted on us, which was I created habits early on that now we're having to go back and break. Worth it, but that's definitely where we're at now. So, okay, along with all of these things, I don't want you to give away too many of your secrets here. You guys can connect with Susan and have your own coaching calls for that. But what are maybe the three biggest things that when you have somebody come to you, either as in a consult or when you're really going to start working with them in coaching, what are the three first things that you start assessing to figure out where they are health-wise with their fertility and maybe what you can start helping do to guide them into better fertility, better health?
I think that sometimes because there's so much like noise, your sister's brother's girlfriend, this worked for her, and Dr. Google says this one thing. And so, you know, you could be on 17 different supplements thinking it's going to help you. For example, I had a client that, like, I'm looking at all the things that she's on, her lab work and all of that. And I'm like, sis, you are taking way too much vitamin D. She tapers off of it, gets pregnant right away.
Whoa.
So when I look at, I have a pretty intense like questionnaire, and obviously the more in-depth somebody is in telling me their nutrition, their sleep habits, their stress levels, all of those things help me sort of pinpoint what is one thing that we can focus on for you specifically that you can work on. Because when we're overwhelmed with all the things we need to change, we can't make any changes. So just being very clear about this person's next best steps and what they can work on for them specifically. And I work with a lot of clients. So sometimes it'll be something that the woman can work on, and sometimes it's like completely different for the man, depending on what their lab work and health histories look like. But really focusing on one thing. And then when that thing is sort of quote unquote mastered or it becomes a habit, then what do we work on next? Because it is a lifelong process. So whatever you're doing for fertility is going to help your overall health for years to come. So anything that you're doing foundationally, building that house is just going to make you a stronger parent, a stronger grandparent, and so on.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so with your holistic interest in all the things and having these past two pregnancies happen at a time in your life where you're a lot more serious about your own health, what would you say has been maybe the most impactful thing for you in having these healthier pregnancies, these hopefully more ideal experiences? Yeah, like what has made the biggest difference? What changes have you made that you've been able to say that oof, that was the biggest difference, or that was one of the biggest differences?
Man, I guess it would have to be about the mindset because I can't tell you how many people recently have come to me kind of with a, I don't know, almost like a negative, oh, how are you feeling? Almost expecting that I wouldn't feel good. And then they're almost surprised when I'm like, yeah, I feel great. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know what it is that pregnancy has some sort of connotation that you've become some sort of invalid or, and it's an excuse to just throw caution to the air or whatever and just like go wheels off with your diet or I'm not going to work out or I'm not going to go to bed or whatever it is. All of those things that just make for a better overall healthy life. But I think for me, it's just about having the mindset that it is important, that prioritizing my own health, even like over thinking that, I used my kids as an excuse. Like,
Oh, yeah.
if I go take care of me, then they're missing out on something. And what I really realized was that they got the best when I was at my best.
Mm.
So I had to squash that dialogue that everybody else needs me. Like they need me to be healthy mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, to be the one that they look towards. My 4-year-old, like she's very healthy. She at 2 was taking like deep breaths to regulate her stress. And when she wanted to have a temper tantrum or she got injured, like we would just stop. And when I started deep breathing, she would start deep breathing.
Mm.
And you can just literally see the stress melt away. But that's something that took me 40 years to figure out that she at 2 knows because that's what we have modeled for her. So I think for me, it's just about having the mindset that it is important and it doesn't have to be this massive thing. It's little things, going for a walk, getting outside in the sunshine. I actually have an alarm on my phone that reminds me when it's time to go to bed because I'm by nature a night owl.
Same.
And I also get up early. So if I'm not going to bed on time, I can't get up early. And then my whole day is thrown off. So I'm working in reactive mode instead of proactive mode. So it's all about the mindset of it is important. It's a journey and it's not going to all fall into place overnight.
Yeah. So that's the driving thing. That's the thing that's made the biggest impact in your most recent pregnancies. I love that. And that is so important. I mean, we make plans and dreams and hopes for ourselves all the times about, or all the time, at least for me, of I'm going to do this when this happens, or I'm going to really start taking this seriously after the holidays, or whatever it is. But coming down to getting a really clear why of why does it matter that I make these small incremental changes in my life? Why do I really care about my health? Is it just so, like you said earlier in our talk, is it just so I can have like a certain size that I'm in or look a certain way? Or is it because I want to model health to my children? And I would like to preserve my fertility as long as it's my God-given ability to do. I mean, ultimately, like we've already said, it's in the Lord's hands, but there are obviously things that we can be doing or cannot be doing that affect that. And so, I love that reminder of just that. You could have said so many things, and you have throughout this whole discussion, but you could have said, it's what I eat that's made the biggest impact. It's working out every day. But no, you came back down to it's having a clear understanding of why those things are important, and that motivates and that drives me to do then all the better things for my body and for my baby. That is amazing. Such a great reminder to me, even. I'm not even pregnant, but I am still nursing my 18-month-old. And God willing, if that happens where we do have more babies, I want to be in a place that not only am I feeling healthy and strong for my other kids as I take care of them while I'm pregnant, but also I want to be able to enjoy life and enjoy this creative process that God invites us into as women to grow this baby in the best health that I can be so that they can be in the best health that they can be. And so, anyway, thank you for sharing that reminder for us. Okay, I do have one more question as kind of like a parting bit of encouragement that hopefully you can give to somebody who's out here listening today. But what would you say to the mom who maybe is listening and wants to have more babies or has a longing in her heart to not quite be done with their family, but is scared about starting over, is scared about what that's going to change in her life, or maybe she feels like it's going to take something away from her? What would you say to that mom?
I think that it is a real valid feeling, first of all, because obviously children change a lot of different things. But my husband and I were married for 9 years. My kids were 2 and 5 when we met, and we didn't have our reversal baby until they were 15 and 18. So that was a long time of just, doing things. And then the Lord really placed it on our heart to have another baby and then worked it all out so that financially we could do the reversal and the miracle of that whole process and everything that happened in between. But I think if the Lord's placed it on your heart, a lot of times He will place things that are really uncomfortable. And the devil would want nothing more than to put fear and doubt and questions in your mind that you think you shouldn't follow what the Lord's placed on your heart. And when I look at my incredibly funny 4-year-old, there are a lot of times when we look at each other and I'm like, what would we be doing right now if we didn't have her? We would be missing out on so much beauty. And the great thing is, we get to re-experience a lot of things through her eyes that it's just irreplaceable. And I don't know what the Lord has planned for her life. I think everybody thinks that their child is really special. I get that I'm biased, but the amount of people who are just drawn to her, that want to know her, the kids, like she's a little mayor when she goes to the park, friends, everybody, but the difference that she's going to make in the world, I don't know what that looks like, but I feel honored that I get to sort of guide and lead and mentor her into whatever God's had planned. So if the Lord's placed it on your heart, even though it's scary,
Hmm.
just know that those fears and doubts are from the devil, not from the one who created you and created your future baby.
Yes. Oh, so good. Thank you so much, Susan, for all this encouragement and wisdom. And you are going to be, and you already have been, such a blessing to all the families who have gotten to work with you and tune into your podcast, which you should absolutely do, whoever's listening today. And I will include that link in the show notes. But you have blessed me, and I know that so many families who have worked with you or learned from you are blessed in getting to make more babies, literally make more babies and welcome more eternal souls into the world through the work that you do and through getting to be guided by you. So I appreciate you for making the time today to come join me and have this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm so honored to be here, and it's been such a God thing because again, I fought this like, no, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. And man, every day I'm just reminded how faithful God is and whatever He's placed in our hearts, if we're willing to follow that path, it's way better than we could ever ask or imagine. So thank you for allowing me to come and share a little bit of our story and hopefully some love and light. And yes, bring on all the babies.
Yes, amen. Thank you so much, Susan.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks for joining me today, friend. If you were encouraged by or learned some new helpful nugget through listening to today's episode, the best way to let me know is by leaving a written review on Apple Podcasts and sharing the show with a friend. Taking 30 seconds to leave a review and share an episode might feel like no big deal, but it truly means so much to receive your feedback and know that this podcast is getting out there to more mamas who need it. Before we part ways until next Wednesday, I'd like to pray Ephesians 3:20 over you. Now to him who is able to do immeasurably more than all we ask or imagine, according to his power that is at work within us. I pray that God would be mightily glorified through you as you seek to honor him with your faithful labor. Amen, and God bless.